Hi everyone, my name is Raven Sweeney and I will be discussing Whirling disease. So Whirling disease is a disease that affects fish and it's caused by the freshwater parasite Myxobolus cerebralis. And this parasite was first described in Europe over 100 years ago, but it was described incorrectly. So before the discovery of its two-host life cycle in 1986, this one organism was thought to be two different organisms in different taxa, and this created a lot of issues for its taxonomy. And until its eventual movement of the entire phylum Myxozoa to be grouped with Metazoa instead of Protozoa. So this pathogen evolved in Europe to parasitize trout, or so it's thought. They aren't positive, but it was introduced in the United States in 1950s, where it began to cause a lot of problems for fish hatcheries. So this was true up until the 1990s, when it began to affect wild populations as well. There was a major outbreak in Montana that caused a 90% decline in rainbow trout populations between 1991 and 1995 in the Madison River, which was a lot of fish. So what happened was, with this discovery, they were able to kind of identify why this happened. So this two-host life cycle has a definitive host that is a species of annelid worm, and a bunch of trout that it can parasitize, and those are the main intermediate hosts. So what happens is that infected fish shed the spores that are produced by the Myxobolus cerebralis, and these spores are ingested by the annelid worms, where they replicate for about 70 to 120 days in the intestine of the worm until they reach this TAM stage. This TAM stage is released in the feces of the worm and is moved by the water until it reaches skin of a susceptible fish, where it then actively burrows into the fish through the skin and moves to feed on the cartilage of the fish for about 80 days before releasing more spores. So that whole process, can take up to 200 days before it begins the whole process over. And this eating at the cartilage of the fish is what causes the symptoms. So adult fish have more developed cartilage, but because juvenile fish are still developing and it's a little bit looser, the symptoms are seen a lot more in these juveniles. Some of the symptoms are whirling behavior, lethargy, and bends in spine, and these bends come from growing with this severe lack of cartilage. So they can diagnose whirling disease with PCR diagnostic tests, or they can dissect the fish and identify the spores of the parasite. And as of right now, there's no vaccine for the infection, and there's no approved treatment drug, although about 10 have been tested, and 3 of them were shown to have some positive influence on the spread, or inhibiting the spread. But right now, there's about 26 countries with whirling disease that they know of. It's kind of difficult to gain some data from countries such as those in Africa and Asia. But right now, it's primarily an issue in the US, and especially the western states of the US. There are some methods for controlling it that are being developed right now. The most promising of which is using UV light to kill the TAM stage of the parasite so that it can't attach to susceptible fish. So that would break the cycle, essentially. Another way they're trying to control the parasite in wild populations is by restoring stream habitats, and it appears to help minimize the prevalence of the disease. And this is really important because the disease has had massive economic